Welcome to this session on Arctic resilience. The session is hosted by the Business Index North, the BIN Partnership. The BIN Partnership is a cooperation between researchers in Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Russia, soon to be extended to Iceland, USA, and Canada. And it's a cooperation that has been going on for 6 years now. Business Index North is a project that contribute to a sustainable development and value creation in the Arctic. The overall goal is to set up a recurring knowledge-based systematic information tool for stakeholders such as businesses, academics, government and regional authorities, as well as media in the Arctic states. The focus on this year's BIN report is on Arctic resilience. The Arctic is experiencing global megatrends related to both climate change and a number of societal and economic issues, creating a need for change to meet the changes and opportunities these changes represent. The word resilience originates from Latin, meaning the ability to bounce back, i.e. to be persistent. However, more recent approaches have established that to become resilient in an increasingly turbulent and changing world, regions also need to focus on bouncing forward by increasing their capacity to adapt and to transform. The question is, does the Arctic have the capacity to bounce back better and bounce forward, to adapt and transform when meeting changing challenges, and what are the best way forward to ensure that? With me from our team of researchers is Erlend Bulvåg and Andrei Mineyev. They will give you some insight into our findings related to resilience in the Arctic. Then we will have a panel discussion discussing the right medicine to ensure or improve Arctic resilience. So, Erlend and Andrei, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming for this presentation. The BIN project has been producing recurring reports for a few years now, and this is a special report on socio-economic resilience. And the reason we are studying this is the foundation for all activity in the Arctic, that it's actually able to be here with a rational being here. It is you can live here and you can earn your wages and you can live in a good way here. So if this is lacking, we will have problems. First of all, a little definition of the area. When we say the BIN area, it's in the blue area of the map. In the Nordic part of the Arctic, there lives 1.65 million people. In the Russian side, 3.85. And when we expand it towards the west, it will be circumpolar in the end. This is a very important area. It is the Nordic BIN area is the most populated Arctic in the whole world. It is also one of the most productive areas, both in food production, in energy, and of course in renewable energy. We are a huge factor coming up as the focus increases on this. So to resilience. Resilience is not one thing. In this report, we have studied 3 aspects of resilience. It is the socio-economic resilience, and it has 3 components. It's the persistence or the robustness of the societies. It's the adaptability of how good we are to forming the society as normal changes happen. And finally, transformation. How good are we to transform the society through innovations when larger leaps happens? Of course, we could have added health, we could have added connectivity, but this is the core for resilience in any area. And as you see, some areas are better than others, but none of the regions in the Arctic are as resilient as the average of their home country. So this is the negative finding here. None region reach the resilience level of the country average. It means that you are at some disadvantage to some degree in all regions. As you see, the best persistence or ability to be robust regardless of weather and climate is in the north of Norway, where you have a strong economic growth and a quite small distance between urban and rural areas in development. North of Sweden is best at adaptivity. They are good at integrating new people. And Oulu region is by far the most innovative and able to be innovative into their economies. So just to show you a little about persistence capacity is strong in the north. And Andrei, why is it strong in the north of Norway?
Well, Arlen, north of Norway is very good at generating long-term economic growth. Also, we know that people have quite good living conditions in most of the areas, but there is still about 25% of people in the north of Norway living in very small and remote communities, and they're disadvantaged in terms of their living conditions relating to larger cities. But anyway, this is quite good. So just 25% at the best in northern Nordic area. So that's why North Norway is persistent.
When we move on to the adaptation capacity, north of Sweden scores significantly better than most of the regions. It's only Troms-Finnmark who can challenge them. And again, Andrei, why is the north of Sweden so good?
Companies in northern Sweden manage to generate jobs, and North Sweden is very good at taking care of migrants. So people coming into the region, they find jobs and they stay. When it comes to northern Norway, for instance, so we have a lot to learn from northern Sweden in this respect, how to take care of people coming into the region.
Most regions can learn something from north of Sweden, is by far the conclusion. And then comes the really challenging part. It's the transformation capacity, the ability we have to transform in the equal speed of the national level. And only North Ostrobothnia is reasonably par with Finland, while the north of Norway, the north of Sweden is though significantly better than north of Norway. And we have looked into that. And what's the problem with Norway here?
Well, it's underdeveloped knowledge infrastructure.
Regardless of two universities, it's still...
Yes, yeah. Yes. It's very important to be able to transform towards knowledge economy. Knowledge economy, it's not just a university, it's a commercial R&D activity. And still, there is quite low capacity in Northern Norway. So there is a need for more new companies and industries, not only universities.
Ostrobothnia, of course, has had a tremendous change after Nokia disaster, but now they bounced back in a fantastic way. So all credits to them. Then we can summarize the effect of all this, of this red lines, is a severely deficit of knowledge-intensive workers in the area. And this is very much of the factor making depopulation happen, because the balance of work and work opportunity is off in very many of the Arctic regions. It sounds overly simple, but in regions in the Arctic where you have a better balance with knowledge-intensive services, you don't find depopulation. So this is and job creation is better, and you have a more what is called balanced development. So even EU's what is called stable projection for stable population is challenged without more of this type of workers. And the number for North Norway, if we were to be optimally in charge, is 20,000. In the north of the Nordics is 50,000 knowledge workers less going to work every day than there should be. Imagine the difference in these communities if these people were active doing their job, doing their leisure life, and contributing with innovations. So that is our main finding. So we are now opening for the panel, Bjørn, what can we do? Thank you.
Thank you, Alan and Andre. To discuss the Arctic region's ability to persist, adapt, and transform, to be resilient, we have a very competent panel. So welcome to Bård Ludvig Thorheim, member of the Norwegian Parliament, live here in Bodø. Please take the stage. Then we have Anders Oskal, Secretary General of the Association of World Reindeer Herders and the Executive Director of the International Center for Reindeer Husbandry. And he is, I see him there on screen, from Boston. Then we have Ossi Pessama, Associate Professor from Luleå University of Technology, Sweden, also live with us here in Bodø. Please take the stage. And the last one is Anna Ranalli Konturi, International Affairs Manager, City of Oulu in Finland. On screen, I believe it is from Oulu. Yeah. Welcome to you all. I will start by asking each of you a starting question and give you up to 3 minutes to reply, and then we're going to move over to a more general discussion. So, starting with Bård Ludvig Thorheim. Thank you for taking the time to participate in the debate. Although the value creation in the Arctic has been on a continuous growth path, compared with the average of the Arctic countries the last decade or so, this has not provided a sufficient growth path related to its human and social capacity. The human resources are diminishing along with the quality of it. This is the most alarming underlying structural challenge related to the possibilities for building a resilient Arctic. And we and the politicians have known about this challenge for a long time. So my question to you, Bård, is it does not seem like the old political medicine has resulted in any cure. So what is your view on the situation, and what new political medicine would you prescribe?
Well, thank you first for inviting me. And I've just come from Ny-Ålesund up in Svalbard, in the really far north of the Arctic, where we have some fascinating research on climate, which is really in front of world science. So we do also have a lot of strong competence in the Arctic region. But I do think that we need this kind of analysis that you have just provided, and that shows us very clearly that there is not one single answer to this question, but you have identified the most important factors, such as more knowledge-intensive jobs, a service sector producing services. We need more of that, and that will be strengthened by our universities and also decentralized research institutions. So I think that is one thing that we have been strengthening the two universities, but by far enough. I think the main problem is that we don't see the scale of the problem. So the scale of the solution is too small. So we have been aware of the problem, but we have not done enough in such a high enough scale. That comes to both when it comes to the universities, but also what is shown in the report. The distance between the regional centers should not be too far, and we can shorten the distance by building better roads, better flight infrastructure, better harbors, and also, of course, also digital communication. So I think all these things are part of the solutions, but we need to do it much stronger than we have done by now.
Thank you. I then move to Boston, to you, Anders. Thank you for taking the time to participate on this debate, almost in the middle of the night for you, as you talk to us from Boston. I believe the time there is around 5 o'clock in the morning or so. We have argued for the importance of formal education and research-based knowledge to create a more resilient societies. But we have put less emphasis on other forms of knowledge, such as traditional indigenous knowledge. So my question to you, Anders, is, from the indigenous people perspective, what is the right way forward to create a resilient Arctic? And what medicine would you prescribe?
Well, thank you, Björn, and thank you to organizers for the invite. As said, it is a bit early here, but we're very happy to take part. I think we're discussing today, as if we're talking about the same thing, that we have a universal understanding of resilience, which may not be the case. We have worked ourselves with resilience since 2001 with Harvard University and Professor Jim McCarthy, the Stockholm Resilience Center, and the Arctic Council Resilience Project. And our understanding is linked to resilience as a long-term capacity of social, ecological changes without coming to a phase of transformation, altering the system. But I think what is crucial to understand resilience is ask the question, resilience of what? And resilience to what? And you have to be very concrete, otherwise it is rather pointless. It is just talk and just another buzzword. So any notion about the resilience of indigenous peoples is really meaningless, as there is no such thing as collective. And this also means that you cannot cheat. You have to do the homework and do it locally. You have to work into local communities, their histories, timelines, as there are no remote resilience. It must be built where impacts are felt. And then a core foundation of resilience is the knowledge base locally, traditional indigenous knowledge. And how to strengthen resilience? What is the medicine? Well, I would argue traditional, because we find the solutions in our own knowledge. We have to use our own knowledge to develop life. And we have worked with extensive food systems where we can see that it is clearly possible to gain a price premium, high value added, as we have demonstrated with our food book, deemed the world's best food book. We have now a new Indigenous Innovation Food Lab, probably the coolest kitchen in the world. We're doing case teaching with Harvard Business School. And experience has shown that customers would pay price premiums. Think of Kobe beef at $1,000 per kilogram. Value added for tourism. So there is much that we could do. More meat production from male reindeer castrate might be possible. It means more bulls around the leisure capital. But we need to focus on how to overcome the shock of oil-based economy, how to maintain our sustainability after it. So those are some initial.
Thanks a lot, Anders. You had some issues with the sound. It was a few words which was a little bit difficult to catch from here, but thank you very much. Then we have Ossi Pamasa, which you can see is live here with us. Also, thank you, Ossi, for participating. It goes without saying that the future development of the Arctic should be knowledge-based, and that the capacity to innovate is a key factor to be able to adapt and transform. To be resilient you need to have the capacity to innovate. It's a general understanding that the capacity to innovate is generally lower in the Arctic than in the rest of the Arctic country. So my question to you also is, how could the Arctic increase the innovation capacity, and by that also the capacity to adapt and transform? So what medicine would you prescribe?
Okay, thank you for inviting me. And I would also concur with the first speaker here. I don't think there is one single answer to these questions. These are big questions. And please, if you allow me, also use a Swedish perspective or a Swedish context and come with some explanation, because I would also like to add to some of these findings, since Sweden also scored very, very low on transformation here. And I would challenge the report a little bit, if you may. And I would also like to have a strategic perspective on this, since I'm from strategic management and I work in a university. So I'm an associate professor in strategic management. And as you probably some of you know, strategy is always long-term. It means that it have long-term consequences. We don't focus on the minor operational things, but we focus on the major long-term things. And strategy is also fundamental. It means that you don't focus on the small things, but the minor things, and operational, but the big fundamental issues. And innovation, and particularly innovativeness, could for sure be strategic. And it could for sure be also a capability. And I know you, Björn, you are an expert in capabilities, but in my view, I would say, I don't know if you agree with me, I would say that a capability is always something that goes on and on again. So it's always repeated. It's not a snapshot. If it just happens once, it's not a capability. It's a mistake or something like that. And many innovations are mistakes. But when we build capabilities, we want to rejuvenate, improve, do things over and over again, and we preferably want it to become a norm or a culture or something, which repeats itself. So innovation is the outcome, whereas in my view, innovativeness is the things that will, the means to reach these innovations. And what happens in northern Sweden right now is that innovations and innovativeness takes place in large projects. Today, we have projects that accounts for approximately 1,000 billion Swedish kroner. And we heard yesterday, we had a new production unit for SSAB to make fossil-free steel. It's a completely new unit. And we're also planning for another unit outside Bodø, which is also fossil-free production unit for steel. Then we have the production unit, which they will talk about, I think, in the next session, which is the battery factory. And then we also have the largest wind power farm outside Piteå, Markbygden, which is Europe's largest wind power farm, yes. And we are also moving to cities, and we are renewing the transportation system, the railway from southern part of Arctic to the very north part of Arctic, Norrbotniabanan and Nya Malmbanan. And if I would take a theoretical answer to this, I would use Bent Flyberg, who is the Oxford professor, and he said, why are these kind of projects so attractive to politicians, since we have talked a lot about politicians? And the answer Flyberg came up with in his 2014 seminal article was that politicians like sublimes. And sublimes are extreme innovations or extreme events, extreme big things. So it's maybe the tallest building, the fastest train, the fastest link between 2 points, a huge tunnel like the English Channel, and things like that. And these sublimes are also now taking place in northern Sweden. And I would say we are definitely in a transformation to a new digital economy, to a more circular society with new renewable energy, and all of these takes place in these mega projects, within them and outside them. So that's, and there's where the capabilities are. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a small follow-up. In your opinion, is the mega project necessary or fundamental for creating a more resilient Arctic and for being more innovative?
I think the mega project, it's the means to go from one sequence to another, because a project per se is a temporary organization, so it won't remain. It's just something that will take us from the past to the future. And the ways we go from the past to the future is important. And the mega projects are important also in the sense, since we also talked yesterday about bringing in new capital, financial capital. And when these mega projects come, the capital comes and the investors comes and the networking starts. I don't know if it's an answer for the question.
Well, thank you. So we need more moon landing projects.
I think that's what Bent Flyberg says. I think it's a really interesting literature, and I mean, when it comes now to transformation, and when we are transforming from the past to the future, I think a lot of that happens in these mega projects.
Thank you, Ossi. Then we move to Anna Ranalli Konturi. You represent the city of Oulu, but also the Arctic urban region via Arctic Mayor Forum. So thank you also to taking the time to participate in this debate. We find in our numbers that North Ostrobothnia and the Oulu region has been quite successful in transforming itself into a resilient region in the aftermath of Nokia. You have a relatively high proportion of R&D workers and knowledge-intensive services, and you are the only region in the BIN Arctic with a balanced industrial mix. So my question to you, Anna, is what could the rest of the Arctic learn from your region when it comes to building resilience, and what medicine would you prescribe?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. I would have very much wanted to be in Bodø, in place, but it was not possible, so I'm happy to join from here. Yes, Oulu is a pretty good example of a northern urban economy. Since the 1960s, our ride over the structural changes has been a bumpy one, with days of glory and sunshine, but also pretty heavy thunderstorms. The Economic Research Group of Oulu University, they actually speak about creative destruction and creative resilience. The boom of ICT industry took place in Oulu during the 1990s and early 2000s. At the time, all attention was put to ICT cluster. And in the meantime, the other sectors of industries was left without attention. As a result, we became too specialized and vulnerable for global economics. So in 2014, when the ICT sector came down, we were not prepared to soften the blow. Suddenly, we had 1,000 radio engineering specialists unemployed, and large number of local firms lost their business. The growth party was really over, and we were suffering a heavy hangover. But this is where the resilience enters to the story. We did respond as a community. Key actors in our region saw the crisis as a possibility of change. Funding was decided to be used for new, commonly decided strategy. The partners committed themselves to invest in these agreed activities. We started to invest in skills, startups, potential growth companies, innovation, as well as infrastructures needed to replace underproductive business activities by new fields of technology and knowledge. Our success in responding was based on the following. We still had our knowledge infrastructure in place. We had skilled and highly educated people. They were committed to Oulu, having experience from international business. They were ready to redirect their professional career and re-educate themselves. There was entrepreneurial spirit. There was well-established collaborative platforms engaging business, academia, and government who had experience in working together and enabling their strategic decision-making at the time. And thanks to those decisions, we have now more diversified economy, new promising fields of innovative businesses based on our knowledge infrastructure and ICT competence, like one of the most advanced digital health ecosystems in Europe, very promising role within the automotive industries, and leading position in the field of 5G and 6G development. Still together with Nokia, still employing around 2,500 people in Oulu. We are constantly looking for new opportunities in a green transition with the help of digital transition. So, in short, do not waste a good crisis. It can be turned to a renewal. And finally, the resilience is very much based on the resilience of people. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. So you had what you did. You had the infrastructure in place, and you also had the level of knowledge you have, the formal knowledge you have in the region were quite high, and also you had good models for connecting people together through cooperation, and then sort of, and also I think the most important that you saw the downturn not as a way into depression, but as a possibility for change. Would that be correct?
Yes, I would say so, very much.
Well, thank you. Before we start with a general discussion, have you had any questions?
Yes, we have. I don't have sound in my microphone. So, thank you. We have several questions, actually. Is there a common ground between business development in Norway and indigenous activities? Is your view on resilience in the North inclusive of traditional activities?
I think maybe that's a question you should go to Anders.
Yes, an excellent question. Well, I can't help but think, listening to our colleague from Sweden, about resilience and mega projects. Again, resilience of what and resilience to what? You see, the alternative to bounce back from shocks is transformation, which is then undesirable. It's not a conscious process to enter. And I think as for transformation for reindeer herders, what does that mean? Well, if we were to lose nomadism, lose the nomadic way of life of following the reindeer, that would be a transformation which is negative. And that is linked very much to encroachment, loss of the reindeer pastures to other use. For instance, calving grounds and windmills these days. And for us, I must say that resilience does not mean that we should become mining workers or get washing jobs at the local petroleum plant. Nor is it about importing labor to fill those jobs of unsustainable industries and or raw material-based industries, I might add. But resilience is about what resources communities have and about the long-term holistic perspective. It's about development on our own terms, based on our own resources, our own knowledge, our own people, our own youth. And so resilience means the ability to identify, act on two ways to strengthen our indigenous societies and economies from within. That is why using our own knowledge is of key importance. So resilience, again, resilience of what? Resilience of who? Resilience to what? This needs to be better clarified.
Thank you, Anders, for a very important perspective on resilience. Did we have any more questions?
Yes, resilience in social science goes hand in hand with the idea of vulnerability. Given that the High North is highly diversified, how do you assess and quantify vulnerability when planning scenarios of resilience?
Anyone? We'll see.
Can you take it again? Yeah. So can
somebody ran off with my mic, sorry. Resilience in social science goes hand in hand with the idea of vulnerability. Given that the High North is highly diversified, how do you assess and quantify vulnerability when planning scenarios of resilience?
Well, I think, all innovation, all innovativeness means also uncertainty, and it also means risk. And risk is the other side of the coin of uncertainty. And of course it comes with risks. And when you build predictable models, you tend to think that this is the way to go. But what we know from innovation is that it always comes with risk, and which means that these predictive models are not applying so well always. And in university especially, we like these very detailed and path models that takes us in one direction, and we tend to think that this is the way to go. But it also comes with vulnerabilities. And like we had this assumption earlier that we need a knowledge economy. And in Sweden, we did studies on clusters. And this was in the 90s. And we identified a number of clusters, and the best cluster that was coming year after year and was best in class every year. So finally, the researchers went there. It's Gnosjö region. Do you know where Gnosjö region is? It's in Småland. They're really in the south. And one of the conclusions from that study in terms of risk was that this assumption about a knowledge economy was really ruined, because they were really low-skilled labor, and they did mechanics, and they were extremely innovative. And we also know from Johan Wiklund, who studied entrepreneurs that leaves from universities. And Johan Wiklund is now in Syracuse, and he was earlier in Jönköping as a professor. He was looking at these clusters outside the universities. He found that they were very, very few of the academics become entrepreneurs. But when they come then, they become entrepreneurs like Google and Facebook. So, of course, the impact can be still big. So this is just, it's all about the assumptions. That's my response to that. I don't know if I responded it accurately. Thank you.
Thank you, Ossi. The young and especially young females are leaving, and the education level is far beyond the respective national average in most of the Arctic region. Just in the northern part of Norway, to be on the average of the rest of the country, there should be 20,000 more people with higher education. So strengthening universities is very important also because we have the numbers, and it's the same number for Nord University and the Arctic University in Tromsø, that 72% of those finishing studying at the university, they stays in the region. However, access to well-educated females is crucial for creating a resilient Arctic. But it doesn't seem like the old medicine works here either. So what's the medicine you would prescribe for increasing the proportion of young educated females into the Arctic? Starting with you, Bård.
Thank you. I would start with on a more optimistic note, because you talked about the mega projects. Well, the mega projects are taking place all over the Arctic right now. I think that the Arctic resilience will increase drastically. The next several years where we will be meeting here at the High North Dialogue, we will see that that will be increasing because there is so much new big activities taking place. However, if you have a battery factory, one thing is the workers there, but of course this is manufacturing that is going to be automated as well with less workers after a while. So we have to make sure that an engineer who wants to be best in the development of batteries and recycling of batteries wants to go to northern Norway or northern Sweden or Finland, because there is the knowledge on how to do it. And that will attract also more females, because we know that there are more females in research, in service sector jobs. So we need to create those jobs around these magnificent mega projects that are taking place. We need to work on getting the knowledge around that production in our region. And I think that is the one biggest thing, apart from, of course, education, higher education, and improving that. I think that is the answer.
But to follow up on that a little bit, because not only do you need young, well-educated females, it's also you need a higher proportion working in the knowledge-intensive sector, because when you look at the numbers of Norway, it's 17% who are working within that sector. In the northern part of Norway, it's only 9.6%. So the question is, how do we increase the number of knowledge-intensive workers? We'll see. Or maybe I could place that to Anna, because you've been through several processes related to that. The knowledge-intensive sector is important. How do we increase the proportion in the Arctic of people working in the knowledge-intensive sector?
Yes, thank you. Well, if I look at it from for example, from our city's point of view, of course, the industries we have been employing more men than women. And therefore, it is absolutely very, very important to diversify our job market, to create also opportunities for well-educated women to find interesting jobs. And in terms of this skills attraction, seeing what is happening up in the north with these mega projects, I believe that
Björn,
we will have to
Björn,
work.
I'm sorry, but you're almost 5 minutes over your time limit, so we have to stop here. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We have to collaborate for talent attraction over the borders.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I've been a good moderator and a bad one. A good one because it's a very interesting project, and it's important to talk about. A bad one because I'm 5 minutes over the time. So thank you to the panel, and thank you to the audience, both here and out in the world. So we will continue the work on resilience because it's important. So thank you all.